Okay. This stream is going to be a little different. What this Twitch stream will actually be, I hope, actually I expect, with, I wouldn't say an arrogant, but more so just a commonsensical confidence, I expect that this stream is going to be the most theoretically comprehensive Twitch stream in all human history thus far. Which is really just to say that no one yet has tried to do all that much theoretical discussion on Twitch. So it's not to put myself on a pedestal there. But really just to say how low the actual ground is. What I'm going to be talking about on this stream is psychoanalysis. But the way I'm going to be doing it won't be quite straightforward. What that really means is that I'm actually going to be using this stream itself as an occasion to go into some of the key concepts and categories of psychoanalysis. So we're just going to get started right now. I don't particularly think that this will need a long introduction. I feel like the concepts are going to become gradually more clear throughout the course of this stream instead. So let's go. First, we have to remember where we were. All right. I'm in a forest. Oh yes, I remember this. I had just been trying to work on my graphics. So we'll have to see. I believe I've appropriately worked on my graphics since the last time I streamed. I hope that it shouldn't be a problem anymore. Let's see, get our steel bow. Okay, I'm just going to play for a while. I hope the actual theoretical discussion to arise organically in the context of this stream. Some mushrooms. Okay. Oh, look at all these mushrooms, man. Excellent mushrooms. I wonder if these are tasty, these mushrooms that I just picked. Okay, that brings us to the first category we're actually going to discuss in psychoanalytic terms. So you'll notice that I was in my external environment, in oblivion, right? I was browsing the world, I was looking around at what there actually was. I kept seeing some mushrooms, and you heard me say to myself, look at this mushroom, look, it's white. Ooh, this one's a little darker, it's gray, right? And then after I got a couple mushrooms and had a pause in my own gameplay, what I basically asked myself was, I wonder if these mushrooms are good to eat. So that actually gives us already the terms of a very key psychoanalytic concept. And the way I try to put it, maybe this is kind of a bit of a homebrew explanation, right? You might not actually read this in psychoanalytic writings. The way I tried to put this, and we'll explain it again after I kill this rat, is in terms of an external versus an internal mediation. So I'm not going to define what mediation is right now. The sense of the word mediation basically becomes more and more concretely clear the more one actually sees that word used. Right, it's one of those categories. But what the difference between an external and an internal mediation is, in an actually psychoanalytic context, is the thoughts that are elicited directly by our environment, our surrounding environment. For example, me seeing this mushroom and picking it up. And then the thoughts that are elicited actually in response to our own thoughts. So that would have been me wondering if any of these mushrooms I'm gathering are actually any good, if they're tasty, right? So thoughts can arise essentially from the things we're seeing, hearing, feeling, touching, tasting, experiencing. But they can also arise, they can be elicited by other thoughts we've had. And this is really a good introduction to what psychoanalysis actually concerns itself with. Because what psychoanalysis is really about is not just the thoughts that our environment tells us, right? These actually tend to be relatively similar across people, depending on, the terms of the environment and the people. But it can be quite similar. When we see a tree, we think, oh, tree, right? But what psychoanalysis really takes as its object is the thoughts that we have in response to our own thoughts. Oh, okay, I'm at Molag Bal's shrine. See, so that would not have been, this notification would not have been relevant psychoanalytically, because I'm just reading this thing that I see on my screen. But what's actually relevant to psychoanalysis are the thoughts that we have in response to our own thoughts. So, the internal mediations of our thoughts, the way that our thoughts elicit further thoughts. Now, these guys might be bad. I'm not sure.
You walk in the shadow of the corruptor. Why do you come to this place? What is your business at the shrine of Molag Bal, the tormentor of men? If you believe yourself worthy, present Molag Bal with an offer, the palpable lion. Go then.
Are you kidding me? Okay, I think I need to find a note here, though. Chiefly, that's my main goal. Okay, I believe I've been getting Molag Bal and Mehrunes Dagon confused. They're quite similar. One of them is the Lord of what? Domination. The other one's what? Chaos. I guess that's not. It's kind of a lawful versus a chaotic evil alignment difference. Before I actually move on with my talk, I'm going to figure out what I need to do quest-wise. Following the light of dawn. Oh, here we go. East. Okay, I see. You walk the path of the new dawn. On the world's truth the light shine on. His might forever unrivaled. His enemies to dust crumbled. Yeah, this person's really running out of bars. They're not spitting as much as they used to. Whoever wrote these poems. Okay, I'm just going to wait for the quest summary of that. Decayed city where the Larceus River touches the bay. Speaks of some sort of lucky old lady. Okay, well, we're going to have to locate that. Any quest markers available? So, appears not. I'm actually going to decide. I've decided I want to go back to my main quest for now. They have quests. They have level limits for these quests. It's probably a function of the way that the game scales. Okay. I also need, while I'm in Imperial City, I need to actually get a recommendation from a local guild hall leader. Let's actually see if I can start on that. I'm not too. Is there a guild hall in Imperial City? Doesn't seem so. Well, I won't concern myself too hard with that right now then. Okay, so let's actually go back to our discussion. Because I've kind of hit a stopping point in that side quest, which seems to have to do with various notes being left around all these shrines. And a hat tip to Mehrunes Dagon. So what I was doing that whole time was basically working through the external mediations of my thought. right? So there were all these these different aspects of my environment that I was trying to navigate in order to keep playing the game. And that's what you'll see Twitch streamers do, right? Is that actually there's kind of a stream of consciousness expectation for all these streamers, essentially. Like you see it in pretty much anyone who streams a video game, is that they commentate upon the game as it's going on, right? And there is, to some extent, the presence of internal mediations, right? Maybe they'll make an observation, and then they'll have another thought on the basis of that observation within the game, right? They'll make a joke about it, perhaps. But really, what psychoanalysis is concerned with is the mediations that our own thoughts elicit. So the sort of chain of thought that isn't actually determined exhaustively by like our environment, right? So it's not just a function of what I'm seeing and experiencing in a game or in my real world environment. But what it is that sometimes these thoughts can become mediated with each other in ways that we ourselves don't know. So that's really just to say that we can have thoughts that we don't know why we're thinking them, right? Hello. Nothing. Okay, they're having a conversation with each other. That makes sense. Anyway, there are thoughts that can be elicited by our own thoughts, and we're not quite sure of the mediations there. And what that really is an unconscious mediation. So, an unconscious mediation is a thought that we have in response to one of our thoughts, and we don't know why. It's a sort of association we make without knowing it's what we're making, right? And psychoanalysis specifically, in Freud's formulation, it involves the analyst, right, the person analyzing, and then the analysand, the person being analyzed. And basically what happens is that the analyst tries to get the analysand to follow a chain of thought, and not to worry about their external environment, right? So the stereotypical image of the analysand sitting in the couch back turned towards the analyst, for example, right? That's really the sense in which psychoanalysis focuses on internal mediations, not external mediations. So it doesn't particularly matter to the person getting analyzed what the analyst is doing, even if they're, drawing penises in their notebook. It wouldn't particularly matter for their sake of pursuing the chain of thought. But the analyst is basically sort of supposed to track the internal mediations of thought until they come upon an unconscious mediation. This is the sense in which the analysand is having thoughts that they don't know why they're thinking them, right? And this happens with everyone, right? Is that individuals get there are things that they unconsciously mediate their thoughts with. So their thoughts might elicit thoughts in turn, and they might not know quite what the why, right? So it's like, why did I think of this is the question. When I saw this, why did I go on to think of this thing? And I see that very self-transparently discussed on the internet sometimes, as people will be like, why is it that I thought of this when I saw that, right? So what that basically is an unconscious mediation. It's the sense in which you don't know, you're not actually able to think what you're thinking. And what actually psychoanalysis as a practice has historically intended to do is bring those unconscious mediations to the attention of the analysand, right, the person being analyzed. And when this analysand or patient was made aware of the actual reason they were thinking these things unconsciously, without knowing that's why, in response to their own thoughts, then what would happen is that would actually be transformative for the consciousness of the analysand. That the analysand would actually overcome the problem, right? And you might be asking, what's... okay, I don't want to speak. I'll speak to my viewers, not that asshole. So you might be asking, what was the problem? Why would this need to be something that the analysand was allowed to overcome by being made conscious of it? This kind of brings us back to the actual discussion possible of the historical reasons for psychoanalysis. So often it wasn't just the case that individuals were needing to know their own thoughts better, but really rather that the unconscious mediations of their own thoughts were producing problems, and these problems sometimes had physical manifestations. So the very clear example here, the historically clearest example, one of Freud's, and I'll move back into the game for a moment after I finish talking about this little bit. I'll move back into the external mediations. One of Freud's earliest case studies was around this sort of phenomenon known in the early 20th century as hysteria, which today has been kind of denatured in its meaning as like women just being crazy, right? But hysteria had a deeper historical implication. It was the way that unconscious mediations, right, experiences that we have repressed, have forgotten about necessarily, can actually resurface later in potentially physical symptoms, which can actually make it harder to function in our day-to-day life. So the sort of object of psychoanalysis there was making the hysteric patient aware of the actual unconscious mediations, the original experience kind of producing their symptoms. And by the consciousness of the origin of these symptoms, they were actually able to overcome the symptoms. So psychoanalysis, sort of in its original historical impulse, was very powerful as a way of resolving some of these symptoms, which had unconscious causes, causes that we did not really know at first to think about, except by way of another, the analyst. So I think that's a good stopping point for now in these lectures. Not to say that I'm not going to keep talking about it, but rather that I need to finish this next leg of my main quest. And when I do that, I'm going to actually talk about psychoanalysis later in history, how it changed. And I'm going to talk about why we don't have as much of a sense of psychoanalysis today as we might have had prior, right? So here we go. Back into the external mediations. What we got?
Sit down. Don't say anything. Just do what I say.
Fine.
Listen, I'm going to get up in a minute and you'll do it. That guy in the pool of you will follow. You follow him.
Buddy, we have some catching up to do.
Don't talk. Just follow. You can't talk me out.
Fine. Remember to wait for him. Honestly,
Take whatever you want. None of my business. We've got a burglar.
did I steal? I hope I didn't steal by accident. I was just pressing E to try to get out of my chair. No, I don't think so. Did I?
A little closer.
Lord Dagon will welcome your soul in oblivion.
Quick then.
Okay, I was definitely on a guard. I don't think I stole. Oh, that sounds important. Okay.
Good work. I am glad to see you, by the way. You just caught me at a bad time. The assassins who killed the emperor were part of a deific cult known as the Mythic Dawn. Apparently worship the deity Lord Maywood's Dagon. I've been tracking their agents in the Imperial City. Guess they know. So you said. That's very bad news. I had hoped I heard you correctly. Thank Talos. The blades will protect Martin until he can claim his throne. Don't worry. We will die trying.
What is our next move?
There's a scholar at the Arcane University. Tarmina's her name. Supposed to be an expert. Why don't you take that book? See what she wants to do. I'll keep running down these and I'll keep going back. If you learn anything, you can find me at Lucy Blogs. That's Talos Guide.
Okay, quick quest.
Like I said, she's one of the brains over at the Arcane University. Supposed to know everything there is to know about the cults. I hope you learn something from Tarmina about this book. This might just be the first thing you need.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back in a couple minutes max. Okay, I'm back. I should be back for the foreseeable future. I do have, in contrast to most of the other sessions, I do a more concrete agenda today. So, I'll be covering that agenda over time. But for now, I'm going to do a bit of this quest. Let's see. I'm going to follow the external mediations with the game. I do feel, yeah, this quest is relevant as well to the, let's see. Is there a way I can access the prior? I feel like this might be a Molag Bal quest, right? No, okay. Yeah, this quest seems to have some weird polytheistic overtones. Anyway, I need to go to the Arcane University and discuss with an academic some Daedric cults. But let's take a look at this book first, see if there's anything I can learn from it. Greetings, novitiate. Try to summarize. So this is kind of a recruitment book intended for initiates to this cult. Okay. Yeah, I'm curious what this professor has to say about it.
Hail. Stop right there, criminal scum. Nobody breaks the law on my watch.
Oh, I must have stolen.
Stealing the stolen goods. Now pay your fine, or it's off to jail. Here's the procedure. We do the casting. First we search you.
Oops. Yeah, I might have accidentally stolen an item off of the table. I wish I was told. I mean, I don't really steal goods all that often. I've mainly just been dungeon crawling, so I think I'm all right. Let's still got
have my ear.
almost 1,000 gold, so let's keep going. I need to find the Arcane University. Deliver this book to some bitch. Okay, let's get back to the center of the Imperial City. Alright. Very circular arrangement to this city. There's a kind of central, I don't know, circular tower. Some nernroot over there or something. What's that glowy plant in Skyrim?
Speak.
You know, what if I'm just a quiet type, a silent type, you know? What would happen if I try to attack this guard right now? I just quick saved. How powerful am I? Let's see. I don't know why I'm doing this right now, but maybe this is an unconscious mediation. Resist arrest, of course. Now let's go back to our magic. How much damage can I do before I die? I feel like this is not a good... Alright. Gonna run. This was just a bad idea. I've learned that this was a bad idea. I have killed none thus far. Let's still try it. Let's see how much Okay, that's just racist. The elves are not all the same. Now we're gonna do... See, I sometimes I follow my weird impulses to just attack everyone. Maybe not the best thing to do in a stream, but... Oh shit, okay. Need a potion. Need a potion. Heal ourselves. I don't know why I'm doing this. It's all very temporary. I'm going to go right back to my quick save when I'm done. Okay, we need some magica potions. Potion of what? Sorcery. Back to the magic, we're gonna... You know, I feel like I'm a little fiercer than a mud crab, but not that much, honestly, at this level. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I should have paid the fine. Maybe I should have paid the fine. Maybe you have a point. Oh, the demographic for these streams, I've been asked by a viewer, And I do have some of the original explanation of the psychoanalysis stuff earlier. I made an impulsive decision to see what I could get away with here. The answer is not much. The demographic is basically just both my siblings. So viewers ages what? 15 to 30. Shit. Okay, I'm getting fucked. I'm gonna go right back to a quick save as soon as I'm done with this. I wanted to see if I could kill literally anybody. See, they're just being racist to me, but honestly, this is something that my race should not figure out how dumb I'm being right now. Okay. Yeah, 40 plus age viewers are allowed. Anyone's allowed who wants to watch. I'm going to be discussing psychoanalysis in a second. I already did to some extent. This was a question I got asked by my viewer. I'll summarize the terms in which I put the discussion so far once I get out of this fucking... this what? Clusterfuck I've been in. I definitely don't have the skill to handle this. Yeah, I don't know why I'm doing this. Okay, let's go back to our standard, completely crime-free quick save. Alright, so I started this game mushroom picking in the forest. I was talking about the thoughts that were elicited by my reactions to my external environment, namely this game, right? So, ooh, mushroom, white mushroom. Ooh, darker mushroom, gray mushroom. And then I went on to ask, I wonder if these mushrooms are tasty. Right, so what I was doing is I was using my experience in game to describe the difference in psychoanalysis between an external and an internal mediation. So to give a concrete definition, an external mediation is a thought you have basically in response to your environment, right? It's the way that a lot of Twitch streams are the same, you know, because whoever is gaming will experience relatively similar things in these similar games. So they'll just be, you know, talking about their thoughts while they're experiencing the game. But an internal mediation is the sort of thoughts that arise on the basis of thoughts you've already have. They're not determined by your environment. And I was talking about how the real sort of the substrate, the object empirically of psychoanalysis has been the internal mediations. Not the thoughts we have that are directly elicited by our environment, you know, like, ooh, that tree, it's got a lot of leaves, right? But rather the thoughts that we have in response to our own thoughts. And I was saying that some of these thoughts we think in response to our own thoughts might not be thoughts we know why we're thinking them, right? So we can have unconscious mediations. Mediations that we don't know why we have them. And the point of psychoanalysis is the analyst works through the unconscious mediations in front of the patient. And I do want to include like this sort of stereotypical image of the patient on the chair with their head turned to the psychoanalyst. That's kind of the point of that image is the analysand, the person getting analyzed, shouldn't be externally reacting to the analyst, right? Really what's important is that the analysand follows their own train of internal mediations until one shores up that's like unconscious, you know? Something that the normal person wouldn't have thought to think in that scenario, right? I went on to talk about the historical basis of this, which is really the idea was that by making the analysand, the patient, conscious of these unconscious mediations, it would allow them to overcome symptoms they were having, you know, difficulties in their life they were having. I use the sort of classic historical example of hysteria, which goes beyond its contemporary sense and is actually one of the sort of original case studies Freud had, right, is that a lot of these unconscious mediations in thought were manifesting physically. So people would have physical symptoms on the basis of perhaps traumatic experiences that they hadn't quite learned the actual basis of. And by reenacting these experiences with the actual capacity to carry the reaction through in a way it wasn't originally, they'd feel better. So that's what hysteria was originally. Now it's just the term we use to describe when women are going crazy, which is a very reductive term, right? It reduces experiences, and it becomes a sort of one-sided dismissal. But in Freud's sense, hysteria had a real object, and that object was in crisis. It needed to be introduced. It needed introduced into itself some sort of change, right, through psychoanalysis. So that's where we basically left off. I was going to, after I got to that historical sort of summary, I ended up doing some quest material and then going crazy on some guards. So I'm going to move into the discussion of the further sort of change introduced into that discipline up until the present. But first I'm going to do some more quest stuff. So let's see. But yeah, 40 plus viewers are allowed. Anyone's allowed on my stream. Yeah, the new rule is good. I do have a new rule. It's no ridicule. It's the only rule that anyone should ever be using ever on the internet. Because people find a way to hate each other without being explicitly hateful. That's the issue.
Ah, you must be the one I got the message about. How can I help?
Hey, is there a side quest thing I can do?
The Mystic Archives have a large collection of books.
Okay, maybe not.
You know of them? One of the most secretive of all the David accounts. Not much is known about them. They follow the teachings of Menkar Cameron, whom they call the Master, a shadowy figure of the right. Ah, yes. Commentaries on the Mysterian Xyxes. Wonderful. You have a scholarly interest in the favorite cult?
I would say more of a practical interest.
Fine then now. I won't poke my nose anything. Official business and all. I'm used to working with the dead. Don't worry. Say no more.
Oh, thanks.
Any place, finding them won't be easy. I've studied Menkar Cameron's writings of books myself. At least those that I can find. It is clear from the text that Menkar Cameron's commentaries come in 4 volumes, but I've only ever seen the first 2 books. I believe that his writings contain hidden clues to the location of the mythic dawns of secret shrine to Mehrunes Dagon. Those who unlock this hidden path have proven themselves worthy to join the ranks of the mythic dawn company. Finding the shrine is the first task. If you want to find them, you'll need all 4 volumes of the commentaries.
Okay, so my viewer just asked me, and this is just quest material. I basically need to find some books, apparently. My viewer asked me in response to my explanation of the no ridicule rule, will I get banned for saying that dragon person looks odd? And the answer to that is categorically never, no. So this brings us to the actual distinctive moment of ridicule, is that ridicule is always a kind of generalization. It's generally speaking a generalization from the uncomfortable feelings users have about themselves onto either another person or onto a group of people. So it's actually okay to say that the weird fucking horns on this fucking Argonian's head just look a little weird, right? The actual way to burn someone, right, in a way that's actually funny and not broadly harmful, is to be singular. So, for example, one of the recent posts I wrote to Facebook, which was kind of getting one of my former college friends back for being an asshole to me in the past. I said he looked like Tom Waits invented the fucking pocket protector instead. He was the kind of guy who would read that and think, oh, that must have been about me, right? No one else would have thought that was about them. So ridicule doesn't include calling people out exclusively to themselves, which can actually be politically productive past a certain point, right? because a lot of people who like to generalize, who like to just ridicule all over the place as a way of batting away personal insecurities about themselves, they honestly need to be ridiculed in the appropriate way back. But that's not to say that you can't do collateral damage. You can't further generalize. You can't hit them and someone else or another group of people. That's the issue, is that the internet actually compounds ridicule by its very structure. Is it encourages people to feel better about themselves by unconsciously projecting their insecurities onto others. And the appropriate way to actually combat that is to call out the way that that's being done in various settings. So for example, for my stream, henceforth, but really I would have done this in the beginning had I had any viewers, is if I see people ridiculing each other in my chat, I'll just call them out publicly. Right? That's the only way to really moderate that kind of behavior, because it's all but self-explicit to the person doing it, but it ought to become explicit to everybody else. Okay, where can I find these books? On another note,
Here, you can have the library's copy of Volume 2. Treat it gently.
yeah, this fucking Argonian looks weird.
Never even seen the third and fourth volumes. You should try first edition over in the market district.
So,
The proprietor caters to specialist collectors. He may have an idea where to locate their books.
So the thing is, my viewer asked me in response to, I think, the point where if you call someone out to everyone
It
else,
was so nice chatting.
and this is, they get defensive specifically in that kind of environment, like, for example, on Reddit, right? They get defensive in an environment where they don't see who's seen. On a thick form of mediation like Facebook with known mutuals, they won't respond if you call them out like this, because they don't want to give everyone else the impression that it's been about them. But if they get defensive and angrier, I mean, what I've done, and actually, like, this will become clear in the article that's upcoming, that I'm going to release soon, or publish soon, is that they wouldn't have been defensive and angrier unless they knew it were about them, right? So you actually have to call out their reaction of getting defensive and angrier in terms of the original point you made. And the goal isn't necessarily always to get them to see what they're doing wrong. Because on websites where they can't see who sees, these behaviors tend to be objectively worse. They tend to be more defensive, more angry, more insecure. The point is to allow other people to understand the way that behavior is born of personal insecurity, which might not always be conscious. So the point is actually to call them out to everybody else. And what that does is it prevents their behavior from becoming the norm. It prevents their behavior from being recognizable as anything other than the way that guy is insecure, defensive, and angry. And I've done this. I've done this on multiple occasions. I've done it on Reddit, which is where people go to pretend they're always right. I've actually done it on 4chan, which I haven't historically used too much. Because what 4chan really is it's the website where children go to repress their homosexuality. And this is not even an understatement. Do I believe in ridiculing with absolutely no real underlying insecurity behind it? So this is the kind of the crucial point. I don't think I don't think that what I'm really talking about is ridicule, right? So what I'm talking about right now is the appropriate response to what is already ridicule. Because people generalizing insecurely about others on the internet are already ridiculing. They get away with it by the fact that they don't assume that they're ridiculing a single person. Right? But I essentially think that ridicule has really two senses. It's the ridicule we all do to each other on the internet anyway, which makes the internet worse and the people on it worse. And then there's the actual appropriate response to that ridicule, which might look something like ridicule in return. So that, in a form of mediation, like an internet community or an environment where people can see who's seen, like Discord or Facebook, that means calling them out exclusively to themselves. So basically hitting them back in a way where they know it's about them, but nobody else does. Whereas on another kind of website like Reddit or 4chan, where actually it's completely anonymous in who sees, the point is to call them out to everybody else. And there's no reason to do this apart from the fact that they had originally been ridiculing someone. So what I would say is that it's the appropriately dialectical way to be mean back. It's being mean back to someone in a way that gets them to stop being mean generally. So that potentially there's a moment of ridicule to that, but it's only the moment returned from the original ridicule. And the reason this is important is that it gets people to fuck off the internet who are only using it to defensively bat away their insecurities, right? And it also allows people to see the way that they've been kind of, like people, for example, who aren't quite as bad with this, who don't ridicule people all the time. They might see the way that they've naturalized the ridicule from others as normal when it shouldn't be. And I think that until we do this, there's really no way of understanding what it would mean to be political, to politicize ourselves beyond the present terms of politics, capitalist politics. So I think that this is actually indispensable. It's a necessary, if insufficient, condition for something like a mass socialist politics and party. I don't think that we're going to be able to have a mass socialist party if people are terrified of how they write to the internet because they're worried about looking bad, right? So that's been my main contribution, is to embarrass myself on the internet to actually learn from it. This is something that Nathan Fielder does in real life, so I shouldn't really, it's not a huge deal in terms of like it's okay to be embarrassed on the internet from time to time, and in real life from time to time as well. That's why his fucking TV shows are so good, because he's someone who learns from embarrassing himself. He did it on Nathan For You. He's doing it on The Rehearsal. And he's someone who's kind of similar to me, right? We're kind of the same guy. He didn't spend much time around his parents growing up. He accidentally learned how to psychoanalyze others in terms of what he had learned as a kid independently. And he ended up in a college, a top college, surrounded by people who were using business lingo to bat away insecurities about themselves, and he found a way to make money off of being deliberately bad at business. So I think he's a very smart guy, and I think he's someone who learns from embarrassing himself in a similar way that I have. Where are we going? First edition. We're getting books. What time is it? So yeah, the answer to that is that the only reason to ever ridicule someone is so that they stop ridiculing everyone else. To put it in as succinct terms as possible. I think I need to wait a little bit before I can get into that bookstore. But yeah, so we're going to move on to the other part of our discussion in a second. I've talked already about, and if I need to, I'll split this into 2 episodes or 2 streams. Yeah, the business of being bad at business, because he's someone who ended up surrounded by business majors who were always trying to come up with the next big idea. And what he basically did was make fun of that for even more money than they could have ever obtained. And it's the way he was smart, but the way that society wouldn't have recognized how smart he was until he made an actual TV show about it, right? This goes beyond his work with Nathan For You into The Rehearsal. Is he's someone who learns from embarrassing himself. I said this in my first stream too, is that artists especially need to feel comfortable embarrassing themselves. Because if they don't, the way they're afraid to make terrible art is also the way they're afraid to make great art. And that's just as true for comedy as for any other art form. Is we have to be comfortable with the idea of producing garbage to be able to produce anything great. And that's something I've been categorically incapable of not being comfortable with my whole life, right? I've been fine making garbage. I've been fine making stupid jokes. I've been fine making bad songs. I've been fine producing bad writing that didn't connect with others. As a way of learning how to keep doing that. And I wouldn't have been able to find the right way to do this until I actually did it badly first. And this is just universally true, is we have to be shit at things before we can be great at them. And preemptively defending the terms of our work makes our work worse, according to the social average. And Nathan Fielder is great because he's a smart guy with a lot of money and a lot of cool shit he can keep doing with that money, right? And it took him a while, right? He was on, what a fucking judge on Canadian Idol. Like, he was probably not having a good time for a lot of his life. And I relate to this man. I see the way that he acts. He's very intelligent. Sometimes I get discouraged out of creating art for fear of it being shit in public. See, this is what my viewer has said, and what's important about that is that it's in public. Right? So you can create shit in private. That's actually where we're supposed to create shit. In the potty, right? Is we do bad art. We make bad things, and then we just shit them out, right? We don't worry about them later. I do think, though, that creating shit in public and getting the appropriate negative reaction and being okay with that can be one of the most aesthetically liberating experiences for any artist. So if you write a shitty poem and yet you end up getting acknowledged regardless as being a great poet, right? Then that is how you continue to write great poetry, is you recognize that some of the poetry you write has been or might yet be shitty. And I think that the way society puts the terms in which we appear to others, like we're terrified of making bad art or making bad things. Yeah, you had to shit in a prop Home Depot toilet, or a prop IKEA toilet in my case. But the way that society makes us unconsciously terrified of making bad things without knowing that they're bad, that's the way that we become shitty artists. And we should really feel comfortable embarrassing ourselves. I don't mind embarrassing myself. I've been the most embarrassed out of most people. You know, people talk about how they have trouble sleeping because of the embarrassing memories that come to them late at night as they're about to fall asleep. If that were my case, I would never sleep again, because I just have too many embarrassing memories to work through. Right? I've embarrassed myself publicly on so many occasions, and I don't really mind anymore, because I've done enough productive work for society, for the world, that I know what all that embarrassment has meant. I know it was the way I was learning. What are we doing? Quests. Fintius. Oh, I gotta talk to you, buddy.
I'm Fintius, owner and proprietor of the first edition. Look around. If I don't have it, maybe I can get it. You must be referring to Mankar Cameron's commentaries on the Mysterium Zartsis. Common mistake. It comes in 4 volumes. The first 2 volumes are rare, but you may run across them from time to time. The 3rd and 4th are impossible to find. But I'm afraid it is special. Paid for by another customer. Sorry. Gwyneth would be terribly disappointed if it dawned on me. So sorry.
It definitely sounds like you shouldn't have given me the name of Gwyneth, because now I'm going to antagonize Gwyneth until he gives me that
I
volume.
don't know him personally, but he was very eager to get his hands on Volume 3 of Cameron's commentaries. Came all the way from Birmingham. As a matter of fact, he's already late for his appointment with the book. Feel free to wait for him if you want to speak to him yourself.
So I gotta get the book from that asshole. Honestly, buddy, you really need to work on your customer privacy.
I'm afraid I couldn't sell it to you for any price. I've already promised it to someone else, on my word.
Let's see about volume 4, though.
I wish I had it, but I have never even seen it. Good day.
I'm gonna take a brief, less than a minute break. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I would hope. We're gonna have to what? What's our next? He's on his way to pick up copy of Volume 3. Well, I guess this will be the appropriate time to talk about the later history of psychoanalysis as a discipline. And actually, this will be difficult to talk about independently. Without first giving the, who's this? Oh, of course. Without first giving the reader a general introduction to Marxism. Okay. But first I need to find out if I can get a book from this person.
Here's from the book. Maynard Cameron's Commentaries, Volume.
Ah, of course. Here you go. Keep us in mind for any future needs.
Thank you. Can't tell you how long I've been looking at this book.
Don't trust this person.
Go ahead, please. Are you following me? Leave me alone. That book is mine. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything about any hope. Very well. Let's see. Familiar with Maynard Cameron's Commentaries. I know that David calls him out social prejudice and superstition. An adventurous, open-minded thinker. Agent worship towards many religions.
Sure, that's the appropriate thing to say.
What? The mythic dawn were the ones? I truly have no idea. I mean, I knew they were David Coulter. Maynard Cameron's views on aliens today are fascinating, revolutionary even. But to murder the emperor? My concerns.
So what's this guy, a useful idiot that I can get the book from for free? Excellent.
Yes, of course. I don't want anything to have anything to do with their insane plots. Here, volume 3 is yours. You do with it is your business.
Well, that was easy.
You can only get volume 4 directly from a member of the Mythic Dawn. See, reading it, sponsor, as they call it themselves. Take this note. It tells you where to go. I don't want anything else to do with the Mythic Dawn.
Damn. Well, I'm glad I scared him straight.
Go ahead. I had a copy of all your... Good day.
Okay.
May I help you?
You ever seen volumetric numbers? Amazing.
Alright, let's get a little bit more of this inner city questing done.
The one from yesterday.
And then we'll move into our second part of our discussion.
All's well. Times like this, I think of food.
You don't suck a toad. You also teach others how to do it.
Let's check that note that we got. Sunken sewers, okay. Now, where's my... Yeah, I'll find Boris first. Okay, gotcha.
You're not easy to get hold of. What have you found out? They'll pay for the murder of the Emperor. Now that we know who they are, it's only a matter of time.
Gotcha.
This just might be the break we've been looking for. Good work. We need to get that fort built. If Carmina is right, we can use these books to locate the Mythic Dawn's hidden shrine. Let's go. I know that part of the sewers well. The sewers run underneath the whole Imperial City. There are access points in every district. The Blades have occasion to use them in our undercover work, as well as a means to move around the city without attracting attention. Follow me. I know how to get to the part of the sewers where we need to meet the sponsor.
Well, I will follow Barus, who I definitely trust not to have fucked the Emperor's body. Because that would be weird, right? Right? Guarding his body.
If I had a question about heavy armor, I would probably answer
I might, I've decided something. I'm going to reserve the second part of my introductory draft lectures on psychoanalysis for the subsequent stream. I think that was actually an appropriate coverage for this stream so far. So I'll be doing part 2 next time I stream. And for now, I'm going to move back to the external mediations. I'm feeling a little intellectually tired from tonight discussing all this stuff. And I want to have some fun sewer crawls, so I'll be doing that for the rest of this stream.
Stick together! Look out! Look out! Over here!
Some pretty low-level enemies, some chumps thus far.
Stick together! Carlos Black. Over here! Over here!
Anything else, bud? Alright, numerous goblins, mud crabs, rats. Let's check that my magic is up to date. Excellent.
Over here!
training of fire.
Making some progress. Wrong move indeed. Nice try, stupid. Some quite low-level enemies encountered thus far in this dungeon.
The room with the table is just through this door. I always wondered if how did you know that if you go up the stairs there, you can get a vantage point on the meeting room? I think I'd better be the one to handle the meeting. You'll be my backup. Keep watch from above in case of trouble. Good. Remember, we must not leave here without the book. It's our best chance of finding the enemy.
I get a bad feeling about this.
I may not survive this. If I don't, you must. You must recover the book and find the Amulet of Kings. I'm glad to have you at my back. Okay, let's do this.
Goodbye, Boris.
For Uriel Septum, kill them! A little
The dawn is breaking!
A little closer.
A time of cleansing. He's almost here.
A little closer. That's three more that won't be reporting back to the master.
Well, I'm just glad Boris isn't dead because I've developed something of an emotional attachment to him in the preceding dungeon crawl. Let's see, anything else we can... Ooh, I definitely needed that. What's that tome? Okay, I think this might be a good enough stopping point for our stream. As I wrote, I will be pursuing the next part of these lectures and the subsequent stream. I don't know when that will be yet, but this was some progress already. Let's make sure we have this, and I will see you all shortly later. Goodbye.